Hey, Bludgeon here with another Dune Imperium strategy video. Today, I'm going to do a deep dive into a leader, and it's going to be all about Duke Leto Atreides, the leader of House Atreides and one of the leaders in the base game. Today, we're going to talk about how to use this leader. How does his leader ability work? How does his signet ring work? How do those things change the way you play the game? What do they allow you to do compared to other leaders? This is going to be for all versions of Dune Imperium. So if you're playing with just the base game, how does Leto work? If you're adding Rise of Ix or Immortality, how does that change things? What new things can you do? I'm going to talk about how to set up for Swordmaster, how to get influence, which cards to pick up or not pick up, how Leto works in the context of other leaders, as well as cool tips and tricks and fun things you can do with this leader. Let's get started. Let's start out by talking about Leto's leader ability, his passive ability. There's no official name for this, strangely, but anyway, Landsraad popularity. So in the book Dune, Leto is a very popular figure in the Landsraad Council, which is where all the great houses get together to do politics. And in the game, this is represented by this. Sending an agent to a Landsraad board space costs you one less Solari. This is super nice. A lot of Dune Imperium is about getting your Swordmaster as soon as you can. So getting one Solari off of that opens up different paths for Leto to get his Swordmaster. So for example, you can get to 7 Solari by going to Wealth and Conspire, or by going to Secure Contract and Wealth and maybe picking up 2 Solari from a conflict, or going to Conspire and getting 2 Solari from a conflict, or going to Wealth and Secure Contract and Wealth again. If you're playing with Rise of Ix, then the shipping track replaces Secure Contract and Sell Melange. So those options are out, but some new ones come in, most notably double smuggling. Your first visit to smuggling gives you 1 Solari, your second visit gives you another one, and then you cash in for the 5 Solari and you get to 7 right there. So that's a potential third agent Swordmaster, which is pretty nice. You can't always do that, of course, but it's a great option to be there. The other thing is, in Rise of Ix, people are going to be cashing that in and kind of drip feeding you Solari. So even if you only get to 6 Solari somehow, you can kind of wait for someone to feed you that one when they cash in, and again, you're ready to rock. So there are a bunch more ways to get to 7 than to get to 8, and this gives Leto just a little bit of a smoother ride to getting to his Swordmaster. Of course, it also makes High Council cheaper, and especially if you're playing in the base game, getting High Council also can be a big part of victory. So those two major kind of goals for your game are just easier to get as Leto, which is super nice. If you manage to go to Sell Melange and get 12 Solari, that pays for both your Swordmaster and your High Council seat in one shot. Now let's talk about Mentat. Mentat can be a really strong space for increasing your options in a round. It allows you to dig through your deck trying to find a better card without costing you an agent. Sometimes it's just transforming a dagger into something useful or helping you get through your deck so you can play your good stuff more often. It also allows you to squeeze in extra agent effects in a round if you happen to have cards with good agent effects but not enough agents to use them. Also, it'll often give you the final agent in a round, which can be a good thing. Delaying your action allows you to see what your opponents do, and maybe you can commit to a conflict, getting to see what they reveal for or what they do with their agents. It can be a really nice space, and this is true for everyone, but Leto gets half price on Mentat. 1 Solari instead of 2 is a really significant difference. 1 visit to Wealth for most leaders pays for 1 Mentat visit, but for Leto, it pays for 2. Secure Contract pays for 3 visits. You get the idea. So it's a good spot, and Leto gets a good deal on it. And sometimes you do it as Leto just to deny it from your opponents. It doesn't really cost you much to do it a lot of the time. And this is especially important if you're playing against Ilban Richeys. Ilban loves the Mentat because when he goes to Mentat, he gets to draw 2 cards from it, right? He gets to draw a card whenever he pays Solari for a Landsraad spot. And so Mentat is super high value for Ilban. And so keep that in mind. If you're in a game against Ilban, it's really good to deny him that Mentat anytime that you reasonably can. Now, the player order here will make a big difference. So for example, if you are 1 position ahead of Ilban, that means you're going to act before Ilban in 3 out of 4 rounds in the game. And so keep that in mind when you're picking your leaders. If you're playing a draft mode, if you get to pick Leto 1 spot ahead of Ilban, it's kind of a nice thing to do for you and kind of a mean thing to do for him. Of course, the discount on rally troops is also nice. 4 Solari can sometimes be a bit much. 3 is a much nicer deal. And if you're playing with Rise of Ix, then reducing the Dreadnought from 3 Solari to 2 is a pretty significant discount, and that leads to some options with Leto where you can kind of play like a combat-focused game in Rise of Ix, which can be fun to do. So because of all of this, and especially because of the Mentat, it's a great thing on Leto if you can find good cards that have a Landsraad agent icon. Because if you have nice cards to send to Mentat, then it makes it much easier, much more valuable for you to go to that spot. Now, let's talk about Leto's Signet ring, Prudent Diplomacy. This says you can pay 1 spice to gain 1 influence with a faction where an opponent has more influence than you. Basically, it means you can gain an influence on a track where you are currently behind at the cost of 1 spice whenever you play your Signet ring. This might very well be the strongest Signet ring in the game. Faction influence is a huge deal in Dune Imperium. Getting to 2 influence with a faction gives you a victory point, and victory points are precious. Getting to 4 might get you the alliance. So getting all of those points from the faction spots is really important, and Leto just has a much easier time of doing it, and he can also fight for alliances quite strongly. Okay, so you want to use your Signet ring every chance you get, which means a couple of things. Number 1, spice is really important for Leto. So try to make sure you always have some spice on you so that when your ring comes around, you're able to use it. It hurts a lot if you don't get to use that ring. You don't want to waste any rings with Leto. You want to play them, which is another reason why Mentat can be nice. You can send your ring there just to get an extra agent to make sure you get that Signet ring activation off. It's also nice to have some water if you're Leto, because that way, even if you don't have any spice on you, you can send your ring to Haga Basin or the Great Flat if you have to pick up some spice and use your ring on the same agent turn. So that means Still Suits is a good spot for Leto, and unlocking Siege Tabber might be a little bit higher priority for Leto than for other leaders. Of course, any cards that grant you spice or water have extra value for Leto for those reasons, and you might want to avoid cards that cost you spice or water for that same reason, because if you have too many cards in your deck that cost you spice, then you might not have enough spice to go around, and you might find yourself unable to activate your ring. Now, your ring lets you gain an influence on a track where you are behind, so it's important to try to kind of optimize your influence such that you're always behind somewhere so that you can make sure to get that bump out of your ring. Cards that gain you faction influence are typically good for everyone, but they're even better for Leto because they synergize with his faction-focused game and allow you to kind of dominate some alliances. A really interesting case here is shifting allegiances. Now, I mentioned that you might want to avoid adding in cards that cost spice, and shifting allegiances does cost 2 spice to use, but it fits in so well with your game as Leto for a couple of reasons. One, it again lets you really dominate those faction tracks, but also losing an influence with shifting allegiance, you can bump that back up with your ring. So those kind of work together really well. The other thing is, just as a denial move, it's really important to take that card away from your opponents. I mean, it's a card that honestly everyone should take, but as Leto, you definitely want it because of the way it interacts with your ring, and also because you want to keep that tool away from your opponents to give you dominance over the faction tracks. At worst, you can reveal it for 2 persuasion and just be happy they don't have it. Now, how do you stay behind on faction influence? Well, one way is to play with leaders who are also good at gaining faction influence. So Leto can be a good pick when you're in a game with Baron or Tessia, who are going to be getting faction influence as well. It allows you to sort of draft off of their success. So Baron gets 2 free influence from his Master Stroke. Well, that just basically gives you places where you can gain with your ring. Tessia gets free influence from her Snooper tokens. Fine by me. As Leto, you can just get those yourself as well. So Leto's a good pick kind of just all the time, but he also can be a nice kind of counter pick or synergistic pick in that sense when you're playing against other leaders who are gaining faction influence, because the more they get, the more you can get. Okay, now let's talk about Leto's Signet ring in the context of Rise of Ix. In the base game, Leto was already a very good leader, but he becomes really good in Rise of Ix because of the opportunities you have to combo your Signet ring and get multiple faction influence in a single agent turn. So the most common one here is sending your Signet ring to smuggling or interstellar shipping and cashing in for that 2nd level reward. So for example, let's say you're one influence behind on a faction track. You send your ring to shipping or smuggling, you cash it in. First, you activate your ring to catch up on that faction track. Then you activate the influence from the shipping track to leapfrog ahead of that opponent and maybe take an alliance. It's very easy to do as Leto, and you can do it even if you have no spice on you, because the first level reward can give you 2 spice to pay for it. So it's a really nice thing to do as Leto, and it can be very demoralizing for your opponents to get into a faction fight with you because of how kind of frequently you can pull that kind of move. Now, you can also do this by grabbing the memo quarters tech, for example. So if you send your ring to Dreadnought or tech negotiation and pick up the memo quarters, you can do the exact same thing. You activate your ring first to catch up. You use the memo quarters influence to leapfrog. Memo quarters, by the way, is of course a great tech to pick up as Leto because your ring allows you to get faction influence, which makes it fairly easy to unlock that victory point by the end of the game. You can do the same thing with Shuttle Fleet, where you're going to get 3 influence. And occasionally you can do all of that at the same time if you're cashing in from the top row of shipping. So you can use the top reward to get one of those techs. So you activate your ring first, then you get an influence from the tech, then you get an influence from the track, and you can actually jump 3 influence in one agent turn, which is completely insane, but not even that uncommon with Leto. I can potentially do some crazy stuff here. Oh boy. Oh, you gotta love it. Oh, you gotta love it. So that's the crazy power of Leto in Rise of Ix. All right, what about Immortality? What does that expansion do for Leto? Well, it doesn't change too much, but it does add a couple of extra ways to leverage your ring. So for example, on the research track, there's one spot that gives you an influence of your choice. And so if you're set up for it, you can send your ring to Research Station where you can activate your ring, then you can get that influence and activate that and double jump somebody on an influence track. You can also make use of graft. So if you're able to get some graft cards into your deck that go to faction spaces, so Face Dancer, Initiate, or some other ones, then you can combo that with your ring. So you graft one of those things to your ring, you go to a faction space, you activate your ring first to catch up, then you activate your faction gain from visiting the spot, and voila, you've jumped 2 spaces again. Leto is such a jerk with these expansions. Okay, so that does it for my overview of Leto Atreides. I hope this was useful for you. Leto is a really fun leader, a very good leader, and not only is he popular with the Landsraad, but he's popular with the player base for a reason. He's a very high pick leader because he's very strong, especially when you add in Rise of Ix. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you click the like button and subscribe to the channel. You can also follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/bludgeon. I've got lots of other strategy videos as well as gameplay videos here on the channel, so dig in deep if you enjoy this kind of thing. You can also watch me play live Sunday mornings, 9 a.m. Eastern time, as well as other times throughout the week. Join the Discord to find out about any impromptu streams that might happen, as well as get into interesting discussions with other Dune lovers. If you like what I'm doing here and you want more of it and you want to support it, then you can also become a member of the channel by clicking the join button just right here, and that's going to unlock stream VODs for you. So if you miss a live stream, you can watch it whenever you want. It's also going to give you a weekly exclusive video that I record just for members that comes out every Monday. All right, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.